Coming up today, decking the halls can bring some predictable dangers, how to strike a balance between beauty and safety, plus advice from experts who see the painful consequences of a careless Christmas. Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell, and welcome to the Morning Medical Update. As beautiful as holiday decor can be, some come with a risk. Christmas lights and Christmas trees, candles, even your favorite recipes should come with a warning. Before we break down what to avoid, let's get to this morning's morning rounds. Our region's first Proton Therapy Center is starting new research that could change how patients get radiation treatment. The University of Kansas Medical Center is partnering with IBA, the company that makes the proton machine, on something that is called flash radiation. Let's bring in Dr. Shane Steckline, a radiation oncologist treating patients at the University of Kansas Cancer Center. He is also a radiation biologist doing research on the academic side. Dr. Steckline, good morning. Tell us, what is flash?
Good morning. So with flash, it all comes down to time. Conventional radiation treatments are typically given once daily over several weeks, and each day's radiation treatment is delivered over a couple of minutes. With flash, the goal is to use much higher doses of radiation, usually in fewer or even a single treatment, and the entire dose is delivered in a very intense burst that lasts a fraction of a second. We still have a lot to learn about the biology of flash, but extensive preclinical data suggests that we can still effectively treat tumors, and it may dramatically limit toxicity to normal tissues.
And as we mentioned, this is an agreement between KUMC and IBA. So help us understand who or what is IBA and how do you work with them?
So IBA stands for Ion Beam Applications. They are the global leader in proton therapy systems. Globally, more patients who've been treated with proton therapy have been treated by an IBA instrument compared to any other manufacturer. When we were selecting the platform for our proton therapy center, we evaluated a number of systems and went with IBA because of their proven clinical track record and because their platform, in comparison to the Mevion system that's being used by the for-profit Proton Therapy Center here in Kansas City, we have a much finer paintbrush, as it were, so we can deliver more precise treatment, and we think that's a benefit to our patients. So IBA supports our clinical proton therapy program, but we've also partnered with them for this fruitful research collaboration focused on developing something called conformal flash proton therapy.
And what does this flash research hope to prove long term?
So the limitation of flash therapy to date is that it has largely used electron radiation, which is limited to treating really superficial tumors. Proton flash has been done in human patients using something called transmission flash, but the problem there is that it's a less conformal, less precise treatment and still delivers unnecessary doses to normal tissues. So our initial evaluation is trying to use conformal flash to treat superficial tumors and spare skin and muscular tissue, but this really has the potential to further our understanding of the biology and physics of flash proton therapy and allow us to treat much more deeply seated tumors in a very effective way, again with the goal of sparing normal tissue.
And as we know, research can be a long process. You have to be patient as you do your research. Do we know when we might end up finding out if this is benefiting patients?
So as an NCI designated comprehensive cancer center, we are committed to following and furthering the science. I think clearly more research is needed before this is ready for prime time, but I think all of our radiation oncologists, physicists, biologists, we're hopeful that our research will transition into patients in the not so distant future, but I think it's hard to say with any certainty exactly when this will be ready.
Dr. Shane Steckline, always good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, every holiday season, fires caused by candles, heaters, and holiday decorations keep the burn unit here pretty busy. The National Fire Protection Association found that from 2017 to 2021, U.S. fire departments responded to an average of 150 Christmas tree fires every year. Other decorations besides trees like candles or electric lights, they caused an additional 790 fires annually. And when it comes to cooking, Christmas Day and Christmas Eve are the second and third most common days for a kitchen fire. That's right behind Thanksgiving. So to keep our homes festive and not flammable, please welcome Dr. Julia Slater and Catherine Golson. Both work at the Burnett Burn Center here at the University of Kansas Health System. Dr. Slater is a burn surgeon and plastic surgeon, also the incoming medical director of the Burn Center. And Catherine, across from me, is a critical care nurse, also the nurse manager for the Burn Center. Ladies, thank you for being with us. Just in the nick of time as we start to welcome people into our homes. We want to keep them safe. So Dr. Slater, you shared with us that Christmas is the peak season for candle fires. What is the biggest risk when it comes to candles?
I think it's important to remember that this is an open flame, and you're putting it into a setting where there's probably more flammable material than normal because people are putting out decorations. It's also important to recognize that candles are involved in many of the holiday traditions around this time, not just Christmas. So I think that adds to all of it. And then you've got a lot more people in the house and much more risk that that candle is going to get bumped.
People and candles and big heavy coats and things thrown up on tables and just not always anticipating it. Are there some candles that are more dangerous than others?
So definitely anything that's unstable, so those tapers that are often put out onto smaller candle holders. When you have them in like an enclosed jar candle, not that it's less dangerous from the flame point, but it tends to be more stable. So the biggest risk is really that it will fall over and cause fire with it. The safest is going to be a flameless candle, which they actually make some
all the time.
Pretty incredible ones that look very realistic.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to go flameless now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's ambiance, but it's safer for sure. So how far should we keep an open flame away from? It seems obvious, but is there an inch amount, foot amount that we should keep our flames away from other objects and decorations?
Yeah, so we recommend 12 inches or 1 foot to keep the candles away from anything that could be hanging as a decoration or.
Get out the measuring stick.
There you go.
Okay, use common sense, but yeah, it's a visual that gets in your head.
Yeah.
We know Christmas trees are another big risk, so let's take a look at this, because if you have a real Christmas tree, you want it to look like the one on the left. That one's watered. The one on the right, not so much. It's a dry tree, so how do we avoid this going up in flames like this?
I mean, the first word is right there, watered. So you have to make sure that you're being vigilant about keeping your tree watered, and you want to definitely be sure that you're keeping track. If all of a sudden it's not taking up water like it was, then that's your sign to be really watching the tree so that it isn't drying out. If you see signs of drying, that's the time to stop using electrical lighting and things on it.
So what would cause it to go in flames like that? Does it matter what type of lights you use on your tree? What is it?
It's usually not the types of lights. It's definitely important that you make sure there's no issues with your lights, so always check all the wiring to make sure there's no frayed or loose wires. More frequently, it's because it's too close to a heat source. So whether that's a radiator or a heating vent, not only does it get hot, but it also, with the added temperature, decreases the moisture to that area of the tree and dries it out faster.
Well, let's talk about outdoor fire concerns. The Consumer Product Safety Commission reported that in 2021 there were more than 6,000 emergency department visits due to fire pits or those outdoor heaters. They're super popular, of course, when we're hosting and you want to move people out onto an outdoor back deck space, as we know. But what are the main things people should know or avoid?
Yeah, so again, just like any open flame, you need to keep a clear space around it, generally about 3 feet. Kids think it's really cool, and you need to keep all kids and pets away from them so that they don't accidentally trip and fall into the fire. And as unpopular as it is, it's really not the time to be drinking your alcoholic beverages when you're near that fire. And never put accelerant into it. Whether you're trying to start it or refresh the fire, you really don't want to add any gasoline or anything like that.
I'm embarrassed to say, but I know somebody who did that recently.
Yeah.
I actually know someone who did that. So, you can't say that enough about the accelerants and not drinking around these kind of environments.
Everybody wants a bigger and better fire, but just be patient.
All right. Kitchens is, of course, leading cause of house fires all year round, but there's always more fires around the holidays, as we know. Any advice for those wannabe home chefs?
Sure. So know your limitations.
Okay.
If you've never deep fried before, it's probably not the day to do it. But just really keep in mind that with everything going on and all the people in your house, you're probably going to be more distracted than normal. So you want to put as much in your place to help you. Pot lids if you have a grease pan on the stove, and hot pads so that you don't accidentally touch something hot. And again, 3 feet for all children away from any cooking surface.
Well, and I'm just thinking about the way I feel when there's a bunch of people in my house. I'm just like, my anxiety is up here. I'm just not I'm not running on every cylinder.
You're not focusing.
You're not
all.
focusing.
Yeah.
You're just kind of in autopilot, and things can go south really quick. Hot oil, as you mentioned, needs to be handled with care. And I know we do it. We fry our turkey every Thanksgiving. We love it. What do we need to know about that as far as putting frozen turkeys into Well, we want them outside, first of all, so don't do that. But what advice do we have for that?
So don't don't put a frozen turkey in. You need to make sure it's fully defrosted. You want to pat it down and make sure it's fully dry. It's the same thing where if you have a grease pan on your stove, you never want to add water. If you're seeing it flare up, you don't want to have water on your turkey when you put it in.
And if you're watching that, that is a frozen turkey going in. That is what will happen. So do not take any chances.
Yes.
Catherine, if someone is not listening, if somebody does not heed our warnings today and they do get burned, what is the first thing they should do for themselves or someone close by?
Yeah, we definitely want them to stop that burning process. So run cool water over the burn. If your clothes get stuck on, we don't want them to rip those off or open any blisters like that. Just run it under cool water. Definitely do not apply ice. And then we want them to apply like a clean, dry dressing, which could be a dry sheet, dry gauze, as long as it's clean and dry.
Okay, so I hear you stop the burn, the flame, whatever it is, cool it down with water, not ice it.
Yep, correct.
And then get something dry on it,
Yep.
but not pulling off clothes if you have any clothes or anything like that. Any other do's and don'ts from that you have for us?
Yeah, no ice or no really cold water. We just want cool water. A lot of times people think it's okay to apply different ointments or even butter. We don't want you to apply butter or ointments or sprays or anything like that. And then we also don't want you, like I mentioned, we don't want you to try and remove any clothing that might be stuck to your skin, and we don't want you to remove any like dead skin or any blistering.
Well, I love what you're saying, 'cause I think our first thought is to run to the first aid kit and start grabbing stuff out of it and putting stuff on it and putting ointments. So that's really good to know.
Yeah.
What you need to do has nothing really to do with the first aid kit. Just stop what you're doing, stop the fire, and get it under cool water. Why not ice or cold water? What can that do to the skin?
The ice can definitely restrict the blood flow, and so instead of we want really good blood flow to make sure that wound will heal eventually, but instead when that restricts the blood flow, it can actually make your burn worse. Can actually get worse.
So speaking of worse, how do you know it's so bad that you need to get to the emergency department?
Yeah, good question. So if someone has a burn that's about the size of their palm, so like my own palm, you probably need to seek medical care. So definitely you can come into our ED and you'll have access to 24-hour access to our burn team.
Ladies, how busy is the burn unit this time of year?
Pretty busy.
We're pretty busy.
We keep pretty busy. I like to say we're maybe one of the only specialties that tries to do a lot of outreach and education so that we're not so busy.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah,
But-
keep them out before they have to come in.
Yeah, but we definitely, and I think each season kind of brings a different injury. So maybe in the fall we'll see more bonfires. Maybe now in the holidays we'll see cooking injuries, and then come like January, February, we might see frostbite. So we have a lot of different types of patients
Well,
that
and
we'll
it's
see.
and it's interesting. A lot of this sounds like basic information, but somebody's going to hear it, and this is going to happen to one person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, oh, I heard that, and I'm going to do that this year. What kind of injuries do you see the most this time of year?
It's usually house fires, like we talked about, whether it's from a decoration or it's from wiring, electrical, things like that. But that's our #1 cause for admission. And then scalds. And that is pretty high in our unit simply because we're the only unit in Kansas City that admits both adults and pediatric patients. And it's much more common to have the scald injuries in our pediatric patients because they reach for hot things all the time.
Absolutely. And we talked about that, the difference between going to the emergency room. You said they see a lot, but when it comes to burns, I mean, these are can be very serious injuries. Sometimes things you don't even see in the emergency department. The process to recovery can be very painful and long. What makes a burn recovery take so long? What makes it so different?
So your skin is your largest organ of your body, and I like to say one of the most important. It's your protection against infection. It helps you with temperature control, it helps you with fluid control, and when you violate that barrier, you not only have an issue with an injury at that spot, but you have problems throughout the entire body where we see effects with your heart, with your lungs, with your immune system. And you have to overcome all of those things to heal from it. Not to mention that as the skin heals, it's going to feel tight. And it's not like you have one hand that you had surgery on that I can just use the other hand. If it's all over your body, anytime you move, it's going to hurt. It's going to be tight and stiff. So it's really a long recovery for these patients.
Every home needs a working fire extinguisher. You'll be happy to know somebody gave me one as a gift last
love
year.
it.
How fun is that?
Best gift ever.
And not just to have one. I mean, you can get them for, I have
Yeah.
to just have to say it. You can get them for like $30 at Costco, and they come like in a set of 2. You know, have one in different areas. You don't want to wait to use it and learn how to use it in the moment. So a very simple acronym to think about: PASS, P-A-S-S. Pull the pin, aim the nozzle, squeeze the handle, and sweep the base of the fire. So pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. And really remember that. Why is it so important to make sure that those fire extinguishers are ready to go when you need them? You hope that they could probably just sit there for years and you never need it, but when you need it, right?
Right. And you need to remember, anytime you've been in a stressful situation, you probably weren't thinking clearly. And that's why we come up with these simple, easy acronyms to try to commit to memory, so that it's just a memorized action that you do. Because if you are trying to look at instructions and read them when there's a fire in front of you, you're never going to be able to do it. So we try to keep it as simple as possible. You want to have it as close by as possible, and you want to be strategic about where you put them. Have one close to the kitchen. If you have a bunch like a heating system or dryer vents, things like that, have one close to that, so that you're not trying to get around the house. Smoke builds up really quickly, and it makes it difficult to see it, and it disorients you. So,
how powerful it feels to know that that if something were to happen, that you're there, you know exactly what you're doing, you know where they're at, you can protect your loved ones.
Yeah.
It gives you that advantage in a really scary situation. Be sure to ask your questions. You can use the chat on YouTube or Facebook. You can tweet us or email the Medical News Network. Info is right there on your screen. Let's get our COVID count from Dr. Dana Hawkinson, Medical Director of Infection Prevention and Control. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, doing
Hey.
good. Just out here at Olathe, helping everybody out. Right now I think we were a little bit happy that we saw a decrease in our overall COVID active inpatients. We have 26 this week as opposed to 33 last week, although we still have some severe illness with, I think, 4 in the ICU. So it is still out there circulating. I'm glad we saw a decrease in our inpatients, but again, we are running into some pretty thick holiday season with a lot of get-togethers and people just trying to be with family and friends.
Yeah. So on that note, low vaccination rates for COVID-19 have led to a headline that's called, quote, kind of a vicious cycle at pediatric clinics, because uptake is so low, doctors don't keep a large stockpile of pediatric doses on hand, which only makes the shots harder to find, which then keeps the uptake low. So just anecdotally, are you still hearing people having a tough time finding these vaccines?
Yeah, I think so. I think for specifically for the COVID vaccine, I think the influenza vaccine's a little bit easier access. But for the COVID update, especially for pediatrics, it does look and does sound like it's a little bit more difficult to get if we are talking about trying to get it from your primary care provider or your pediatrician's office. I was just recently I went on to the vaccines.org. And that is a place where you can find where vaccines are available. And these are respiratory vaccines. But this is specifically for the COVID-19 vaccine. There is an adult, but also a pediatric area where you can look for just pediatrics itself. I was on there doing that today, and Wyandotte County does offer it. But other than that, it's really the commercial pharmacies. I didn't really see any of the private pediatricians' offices. So, but I think this will be helpful if you do want to get your child vaccinated. It is very helpful to understand where you can find those vaccines.
All right, Hawk, thanks for the resource this morning. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. All right, let's get to some questions from our viewers this morning. And Angie wants to know, do fire extinguishers expire?
yes, they do.
Okay.
So you want to look at your extinguisher and see what the date is, and make sure that you're replacing it as they expire.
Okay, question from Jeremy. Are there any parts of the body where if you get burned, regardless of thinking, it's not too bad, you should still get it checked out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So your face, hands, feet, any of those kind of specialty areas where you have to move a lot, things like that, no matter what size, you should probably get it taken. And besides just the size, even if it's smaller than the size of your hand, if you have no sensation or feeling over it, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that means the burn is deeper. So even if it's smaller than your hand, if it is white with no sensation or no pain over it, get that seen, because most likely that is a full thickness or 3rd degree burn.
You welcome them in your unit at any time when that happens. And Ruth Ellen says she's been listening and multitasking, but just heard, yes, fire extinguishers is a gift. Great idea. So
Yes.
if any last minute ideas, yes, the gift of safety. It never
And
hurts.
smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors
so, yeah.
and fire ladders. If you have someone that has a 2-story house,
Yes.
You want to have additional escape routes if there is a fire, especially on the 1st floor, so that you can't get out.
Thank
So
you for reminding me. I've been thinking I need those. I've got 2 kids on the 2nd floor and
Yeah.
I don't have them, so
Absolutely.
I'm going to get them.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
it's a great housewarming gift, or if you have a couple that's getting engaged or married, they're great to start out their lives with all of those safety tools.
Love it, love it. Okay, Stu is asking, I always hear about percentage of burns, like such and such amount of percentage of the body was burned. How is that measured?
Yeah, so we break down a body, we assume that the body is 100%, and then we break it down into smaller parts so that when we're looking at a patient, we can get a very accurate a very accurate number of how much of their body is burned. And so there's some simple ways to do it, like using your hand. So a patient's hand is approximately 1% TBSA, or total body surface area. It's not super accurate, but it's a nice rough estimate. We also have a mnemonic, what's called the rule of 9s, where you break the body into 9%. So each arm is 9%, the head is 9%, and then the trunk is 18%, and legs are 18%. We actually use diagrams in the burn unit when a patient is admitted that breaks it even smaller body parts, so forearm versus upper arm, and that just lets us get more accurate.
Speaking of numbers, Steve says that he's recently heard about 4th degree burns. We hear about 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. What's 4th?
Yeah, so 1st degree is going to be your sunburn. 2nd degree is going to be into your skin, but not all the way through your skin. And then 3rd degree is all the way through your skin. 4th degree we talk about is any burn that goes beyond the skin and the immediate subcutaneous tissue or tissue under the skin into things like muscle, into things like bone. And we see that a lot this time of year in patients that have nerve issues where they don't have good feeling. And so either from diabetes or drugs, things like that, and they leave body parts close to a space heater for a long time, you can get burned all the way down through to your bone.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. Anne wants to know what medicine should she keep in her first aid kit in case of a burn?
Bacitracin is generally what we recommend for it. You want to try to stay away from Neosporin simply because a lot of people have skin irritation to it if you're using it. But just bacitracin, which can be bought over the counter, and you can just get the generic antibiotic ointment over it.
Okay, because you were saying don't put Vaseline, try not to cover it with anything, which might feel like the natural thing to do.
Right.
What about keeping some type of like dry gauze or something in there? Because you mentioned
that'd
dry
be-
material.
That'd be a great option to keep in your first aid kit, yeah.
Yeah, gauze and rolled gauze so that you can hold any dressing in place.
Jennifer says her husband likes to keep a big fire going until guests leave at night, but she's nervous that it's not fully out. You never really rest well until that fire's out. I've looked down through my window and said, I'm not really going to close my eyes until I know that last burn is out. How do you make sure it's okay to leave a fire pit safely?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you're not seeing any glowing embers, that you're not seeing any smoke coming off of it. Definitely, you can use water. Pour water on it to make sure that it's gone out, make sure that things have cooled off in the area around it. You want to make sure that your fire pit itself isn't getting hot and staying hot, that it could be near any dry leaves or anything like that, because that could ignite as well.
Okay, it needs to be out. There's
Out.
not even any smoke coming off of it.
Correct.
Okay, that is a really, really good thing. What about how close it should be to the house? We have to keep each area, state, counties have a certain amount, like some codes that you have to follow as well, right?
Right. So you want to know the codes for your local area. And again, the minimum that we always say is the 3 feet, just to kind of keep it very standard. But make sure that you know the codes for your specific area.
Anne is asking also, should you check your lights? You said making sure should you check your lights before you pack them up each year.
You should check them when you take them out and before you pack them up. And you want to just run along the entire strand of the light and make sure you're not seeing any frayed or pinched wires, or especially any exposed wires.
Because I'm thinking of like Clark Griswold and that big giant ball, and that's how when I'm done, I'm just like, I'm ripping them. I'm like, just you know.
Just take a couple extra minutes, and you know, a few minutes for safety for yourselves and for your family.
A lot of
really
good like deep breathing when it comes to like just being in the kitchen, and just like you said, when it comes to just trying to like get your mind right and think about what's going on in your house and when you have people around, and it's a different environment. So good tips. I want to get our takeaways today. Catherine, for folks watching, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from our chat?
Yeah, I think my hope is that, you know, if someone sustains a burn injury at home and there's any question at all, please come to our emergency department. Like I said, you have 24-hour access to our burn experts. So any question at all, just go ahead and come to our ED.
You're busy, but you're not that busy, right? Okay.
Correct.
All welcome. And Dr. Slater, what would be the biggest takeaway?
I think it's really important that everybody gets to enjoy this time with their families and the holidays. Just do it smartly. Take care to pay attention to where you're putting candles, what you're doing in the kitchen, and just make sure that everybody's safe but gets to enjoy themselves.
Okay, are you eyeballing or judging when you walk into someone's house? Like, ooh, that's like, are you looking over and perusing people's environment? Every once in a while, you said it.
Every once in a while.
I may or may not be checking you out.
You know, I just want to make sure they're safe
That's
too.
right.
My goal is never to have to treat my friend's family or anyone in the unit if we can avoid it.
That's your job.
Absolutely.
Thank you both so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Thanks to both of these ladies. Thanks to our viewers for being with us today. We'll see you back here tomorrow. No two people are exactly the same, and that means the best health care is tailored to the individual. I'm Jessica Lovell on the next Open Mics with Dr. Stites, creating a database that can shape the future of medicine, what the All of Us research program wants from you. Wednesday at 8.
Subscribe to our morning medical update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now everywhere podcasts are available.